Hello everyone, this is summary lecture number 2. This one's going to focus on chapter 3. Chapter 3, please check the assignment sheet. We're not going to read every single page, just a subset of chapter 3. So let's just jump into this, and again, this will probably be 5 to 8 minutes shorter than the prior. So let's go a quick introduction. Number 1, we learned about the different political, economic, and legal systems in the prior lecture, but these different systems have a direct influence on the level of economic development and attractiveness in a country. So the political system, okay, again, favorable, unfavorable, middle of the road, where's it going? This impacts whether a business may or may not want to do business in a given country. Same with economic and legal system. So the three collectively, understanding where a country stands in each one of those three areas influences the rate of economic development and hence the attractiveness of things like foreign direct investment and people willing to migrate to their country. So over the past 10, 15 years, there's been a trend toward a move toward democratic forms of government and market-based economic reforms. All right, so and a focus on protecting property rights. So again, not that everyone's democratic, not that everyone's market-based anymore, but they're skewing in that direction because they're looking for a way to grow their economy. They want investment in their country. They need to make sure that if people come to their country and invest in their country, their property and plant and equipment and so on are protected. In other words, their property rights are protected. So there's differences in economic development, and what that results, a couple ways to look at it is this. The common measure, gross national income, GNI. So this is basically the amount of money the individual consumer has to spend on stuff. So the gross national income is at the total level of the country in terms of money left over individuals have to spend on goods and services. So that's a good thing to try to understand. If people don't have any money to spend, they're not going to buy your products. Another measure that's equally important is purchasing power parity, PPP. What this does is it adjusts the monies that you're looking at in an economy, one to a US dollar base, and the equivalent of what those dollars would buy in that country. So it allows you to compare countries more easily one-to-one because otherwise you've got currency exchange rates, different inflation rates, different things of that nature. So these tools help. So let's take a look at a chart. So right now you've got both GNI, and we got PPP, and we got GDP. GDP I didn't find yet. GDP is simply gross domestic product. This is the total value of goods, products, and services developed and sold by a country in a given year. The value of goods, services, and products produced. So let's take a look at a couple different countries. First, let's take care of the U.S. Again, in 2014, there's newer numbers out which we'll take a look at, but the trend is fairly similar. So the average gross national income in the United States is $55,000 per capita per individual, if you will. And that buys, since again the U.S. dollar is the base in this scenario, it buys about $55,000 worth of goods. All right. Now let's take a look at a different country. Let's take a look at China. China, you can see there that the average gross national income is $7,400, okay, per person, much lower than the U.S. But it buys almost twice the amount of goods, all right, because the cost of the goods and everything like that per currency buys more. So therefore, it's important to understand those. So you can look at the relationships through the various different countries. Now let's go to gross domestic product, because this is huge and it's driving a lot of investment these days. If you take a look at China, their gross domestic product, or what they're producing, has been growing nearly 10% a year. Now this is getting near 6% right now where we're at. Take a look at the U.S. back in 2014, it was about 1.5%. All right, it's currently a little over 3%, but that's probably not sustainable. But just to give you a sense of why different countries such as Brazil and India and China are attractive options for investment because those economies are growing, they're producing more goods, and so on. So it's important to understand that. So you can take a look. Here's a color-coded map, and if you take a look at the key, and again, you can take a look at the slide. I'm only leaving it up for a second, but it's a real quick way to take a look at gross national income in different countries. So you find your country on this that maybe you're going to be assigned to, and you can see sort of where they stood in 2014. I'll provide tables that give you the most current data, which will be a few more years recent. Same thing with gross domestic product. Again, a color code given the average growth rate back in 2014 over a 10-year period, okay, from 2005 to 2014, where things stand. And a lot of times we take a look at 10-year trend lines to just see where things have been. So let's take a look at broader concept on development. All right. So one of the economists said development should be assessed less on material output, more on capabilities and opportunities. So what are people able to do? So what kind of education level do they have? And what kind of opportunities in terms of employable? Can they start their own business? Are there a lot of businesses starting up very rapidly? Are businesses growing quite a bit? Are there a lot of new businesses? So that's an important development to understand whether an area is attractive or not. Another thing to look at is what's called the Human Development Index, HNI. HNI has to do with measuring really three different things. Number one, life expectancy. How long are people living? Number two, level of educational attainment. You'll see some countries have hardly any grade school education, let alone college. And finally, what are the average incomes to meet the basic needs in that particular country? Okay, you need to understand that because a low income in one country can get a lot more than it would if those same people came to the United States, for example. So looking at the Human Development Index score in the country you've been assigned to would be something worth doing. So again, another color-coded chart, everything from red being very good, HNI score, to green, or blue, which is suffering, struggling, difficulty, HNI. You know that, again, education attainment is low, average income is low, life expectancy is low. Again, are those the attributes that's going to allow you to go into a country, invest in FDI, property, plant, and equipment, and hire people? You're going to have more risk in the lower countries than you are in the higher countries. Okay, but at some point in time, the lower countries, developing countries, step into becoming higher performing, such the way China and India are now, and become very attractive markets. And so when do you make that decision to enter the market? All right. Other drivers, okay, of the economy to sustain long-term economic growth. It's about innovation, okay, coming up with new products all the time, new versions of product, new products, new releases, and also the entrepreneurial activity, new types of businesses, the number of new type businesses, how many of the new businesses succeed, and so on. So trying to understand that. We'll take a look at something here in the next couple of weeks called the Ease of Doing Business Index. And it takes a look at a good number of metrics that help you understand how easy it is to start a business. Innovation. Okay, again, kind of touched on it before. These are new products, new processes, new organizations, just the overall cultural acceptance of we've got to improve, we've got to better ourselves from where we're at. Entrepreneurs, again, these are people with new ideas. How challenging is it, or how easy is it to start a new business, okay, and to grow it in a given country? And what kind of infrastructure for new business exists? Again, some things to take a look at. In general, innovation entrepreneurship tend to be driven in countries with high economic freedom, meaning people have the freedom to go start a business if they choose to do so. If I have the freedom to do a business and supply and demand drive it, if I have something that people want, they're going to come after it. That's going to drive economic growth. All right. So again, some countries that have a high economic freedom and growth: Hong Kong, Switzerland, Singapore, U.S., Canada, and Germany have all done pretty well. All right. Countries that lack that economic freedom fail to achieve this. The bottom line is, if it's not by supply and demand, they're state-run businesses. There's not free and open competition. Even if I have a better product, I might not win. That tends to scare people away. And so the bottom line is, you're not going to get investment in your country unless there's an opportunity to profit from my ideas that I bring in. Political system, same kind of thing. Democratic regimes tend to be more conducive than dictatorships. All right, because democratic, you're doing what the people want. And there tends to be a little more supply and demand, and again, trust in the system. So limiting human freedom is going to suppress human development and therefore limits progress. So bottom line is, you have a dictatorship, there's repression going on, it's going to deter people from trying new things and entrepreneurships and so on. Geography, education, economic development. One, your geography does matter. I mean, if you're in Antarctica, it's hard to attract people. How easy it is is the infrastructure to enter your country, whether that be shipping ports, whether that be by air, are the things there that allow people to move around freely in your country and ship products and get them into the hands of consumers, or is it difficult to do that? So it's, again, something you need to understand and take a look at. Education levels, not only in terms of are these people have the education and therefore the careers and make the income to buy your product. Secondly, do you have the pool of workers to employ that you can hire into your company to do what you want to do? So it's both on the buying side and the ability to actually develop and deliver your products and services. So again, another chart better spent looking at away from this video in the actual PowerPoint, which I'll make available. Okay, and you'll see there's an actual index down here, heritage.org, will allow you to go take a look at this in terms of how it stands today. They update this a lot more frequently. So again, you can take a look at economic freedom score, 80% to 100, for example, is red, all the way down to not much economic freedom at all. And again, depending on where you're at, attractive versus unattractive. Few more items we're going to try to address in the next few slides. Number one is the topic of deregulation. All right, so and that has to do with removing obstacles or restrictions, allow people to do what they're going to do. So, example, everything, there can be a lot of cost and different licenses and different things of that nature, and a waiting period that can, stop people from wanting to come in and start a business, and also can inhibit your ability to cost effectively compete in the market. So deregulation removes those regulations. Red tape allows you to start up your business. Now there's a bad side to that, not a bad side, but there's a balancing act. If there's no regulations out there, people can tend to take advantage of citizens in society, and you get yourself into a mess like we did in 2008 with the loose regulations on financial transactions. Privatization. Privatization is simply this. That's the transfer of state property into private individuals. So a lot of economies that were totalitarian in the past started moving toward a more democratic system and had a lot of government-owned, government-managed, government-run companies are starting to sell those because they know and they are not able to compete on a global level with those businesses. So they're turning them into private companies. So individuals are buying those and running them and turning them into private companies. Privatization is hitting a lot of different things. So even here in the United States, there's different government functions in different states where there's a big drive to take that from the government-run sector and government enterprise and turn it over into private business. For example, just areas of trash collection, have been turned into over in many municipalities to private contractors, private companies that do that, versus a state-owned, state-hired employee that does those kind of things. Okay. Finally, legal systems. Again, you're taking a look at the legal systems within a country, and do they protect your business practice, protect your investment? What recourse do you have when things don't happen the way they do? What happens when someone breaks a contract? Again, understanding the topics of deregulation, privatization, and legal systems are risk and costs and benefits that you need to understand. So let's close with a few topics. Benefits. When you're looking to go into a particular country, do business, one of the things you're looking at is what's the market size, right? What is the market size? Are there 10 million people? Are there 20 million people? Are there 50 million people? Are there 100 million people? Again, the United States population is around 330 million. As we talked about in class a week or so ago, you're looking at 1.6 billion people in China. Obviously, an incredible market size, and why there's so much talk about China. But secondly is the purchasing power. Just because there are a lot of people, do they have the money to buy the kind of products and services that you currently provide? Or are you going to have to modify those products and services and to get them to a cost price point that makes sense for you from a profitability standpoint and a price standpoint from the consumer? There's ability, first mover advantage. That basically says entering different markets with my new product ahead of everybody else. I'm the first one to market. There's advantages to that. There's risk associated with that, but there are major advantages too in terms of having the brand name that people recognize. All right. There's also something called late mover advantages when going to a market, meaning I might want to wait, watch some other companies do it, what's the walls they hit, the problems they have, and then not repeat those errors and go in clean. So that's very popular. So let's talk about some different costs, and then we'll wrap this up. Number one, there's political costs. This is cost of doing business in a country, what it takes to get into that country, the different regulations and things that are in place. How do you interact with the government? How does lobbying work? Do you have a fair business terrain? Are there state-run companies that, obviously you're going to try to bid against and win? So it's a level playing field, and if it's not, what's it going to cost you in order to be able to compete in an effective way? Economic cost really has to do with the sophistication of the infrastructure and the overall economic system. All right, is it market-based, and is it ran by supply and demand? Is it the best product wins, or are there other influences that matter? How about the basic infrastructure, getting into and out of the city and getting products and services into the hands of the customers? How easy is that, or how difficult is that? The legal cost, again, it can be much higher in different countries where you've got to protect yourself in a different way, or you're not going to be protected and you just take the risk. And again, back to the comment we made a moment ago, if you're a first mover, you're going to a country that people have avoided in the past. There are some major gains you might have by doing that, but there are some major costs you may also incur. Risk, you got political risk. Likelihood the political forces will cause drastic changes, meaning, you can see what's happening in Venezuela right now. Again, I talked about Russia in a prior comment. Russia built a bottling plant in Russia, and ultimately Russia kicked U.S. owners out, took possession of the plant. We'll talk about a term for that later on. The economic risk, bottom line is, how is inflation being managed in that country? All right, as their gross domestic product, is it growing? What is the consumer salaries, income, gross national income? What direction is that going in? So they're taking a look at their policies from a political aspect and saying, what impact is it having on the economy? Is it helping it to grow, or is it constraining it? And then legal risk. Again, what's the likelihood that a trading partner breaks a contract with you, and what recourse do you have? What rights do you have? Even if you have the rights, what does it look like? I mentioned in class a couple of weeks ago, yeah, in India, you might have that right, but the backlog is over 1 million cases in given areas. How many years is it going to take before your case ever gets there? You may not even be in business by the time your case sees a judge. So just an overall summary chart about the benefits, costs, and risks that you want to take a look at as you enter a country. So with that, we're going to close this off. Please, again, take a look at the online discussion question that follows this particular lecture, and complete both of these by the end of class on Tuesday, February 5th, and then respond with 2 posts to 2 of your classmates before Wednesday night, February 6th at midnight. Thank you very much.